everybody, let me show you how I painted this sweet little dogwood branch. I started out by wetting with just a wet wash, no paint at all, in the middle of each flower that I drew, and I just dropped in a little bit of lemon yellow paint, and it was a little bit watery, so it just bled out into that wet wash. And then I let that dry completely, and then I grabbed my masking fluid and I put dots in the middle of each one for the stamens. Next, we're going to add the background. So we're doing some negative painting here. I'm going to use my round brush, and I'm just going to wet around each flower petal, and I'm going to do it in sections. So it's just clear water. I have a little blue on it here, but you can see it. And I'm just bringing it out further from the petals and making it clear near the edge of the paper. And I'm going to take my cobalt blue and I'm going to just dab it in there. Now I have like a watery mix of my cobalt. It's sort of like a tea to a coffee blend, and I want it kind of watery because I can always add on to it and add more pigment to it if I need it or if I want to make it pop more. So I'm just going to continue to paint my wash all the way around every little stem and every little petal. So your whole background has some sort of wash, and you want it to be blurry. So it's the background, it should be a little blurry, a little bokeh. Inside the stem area, I'm just painting it just with pure color. And as long as the paint is wet, you can adjust it. So right there, I took away some of the color that was bleeding too much, and I'm adding actually some more of my cobalt blue in towards the edges, and to just make some sharp edges and make that flower pop just a little bit more. So I'm going to continue doing this all the way around all of the other flowers. I'll speed it up just a little bit. So now you can see the flower is to the right there, peeking into the camera, and I'm trying to get that green color. I'm just gonna mix a green similar to that color. It's sort of a yellow green, but a little bit on the darker side, so maybe a tiny bit of brown add to it. Depends on the color green that you're using in your palette. So you want to try to match that green as best you can. So a little bit of yellow, maybe a teeny bit of brown to just make it a little tiny bit darker. So, and I'm probably going to go over this again later, so I kind of build up my colors when I watercolor. I like my paintings to look kind of realistic but kind of loose at the same time, so it has a fresh fun look to it. So I just added right there, I added a little bit of brown right into the middle, and I'm looking at my flower to see what's going on. So now we're going to do the tips. The tips have this reddish pink brownish color on the edge of each petal. So I'm wetting it again. I tend to wet things and then add color. That's sort of my style. So it's sort of like I'm practicing before I hit the color. So now I'm just letting that color bleed into that out, so it's not harsh. It's harsh only at the edge of the petal and soft on the inside of the petal. Now this red is sort of, I think it's just like a Winsor red or just a regular red, and I added a teeny bit of burnt umber to it. And it's really washed, and I'm going back and I'm just fixing those edges or adding more water around them so they bleed a little bit more. And it only works while it's wet, so if this had dried it would not bleed, and you would get a harsh line. So I'm going to continue to do that for all of the flower petals. So one color I almost always have on my palette is a Payne's gray, and I use this as like a primary gray. It's sort of a bluish gray, so if I add a teeny bit of blue to it, it turns more blue. If I turn a teeny bit of pink into it or red into it, it'll turn more purple. So I'm kind of going for a purplish bluish, and I don't want all of my shadows to look exactly the same. So here I have more of a purplish color, and I'm just adding some shadow lines into my petals to give them my petals a little curve. So they're curving, and you want to get that illusion of it curving. So I'm adding just a shade here and there wherever I think my petals are curving or going to be in the shadow a little bit. And then we'll come back later and add some detailed lines. So here I took some of my sap green and maybe added a little bit more yellow to it, and I am just going to go over every leaf and give everything a wash. And then I'm going to go back into them and just drop in a little bit more color just to make them look more three-dimensional. And you want to add a little bit of darker color in towards the center of the leaf so that it looks like it's coming out from under. And you can't have light without the dark, so you really have to add a lot of darks to your watercolors, otherwise nothing's going to pop and it won't look three-dimensional. So, but I gradually work mine up, so I will start very light and then I'll keep adding to it. As long as my wash is wet, I can work the color into it and it will bleed in there and look really smooth. And when it's dry, you can dry brush little veins into the leaves. Here I'm taking my burnt umber and I'm just painting in with a flat wash all of my stems and just making it so it's a flower growing on a stem, so we need to show those stems and where they're going. So you have to be careful to paint every single little spot where the stem is showing. And I'm just going to go over it with a darker color and give one side a shadow. I added a little Payne's Gray to that color, so now we have a shadow line going in, and that really makes it have a three-dimensional rounded quality to the stem. So here I'm deciding where I want to put more veins into my leaves, so I'm dropping in some clear, and I'll go back and just hit it with a little bit of my purpley blue gray color. So we're just building up those little veins in the leaves, and they're going in the direction of the leaf, how it grows. So if you're on one side of the petal, it curves with that side. If you get to the other side of the petal, you're going to turn your stroke to be with the grain of the petal. So here I waited for my painting to be completely dry, and I rubbed off all of the masking fluid that was in the center of each flower to make those stamens. If you didn't use masking fluid because you didn't have it and you just painted the middles dark green or the green color with the yellow, then at the end of the painting you would just get some gouache and add a little bit of yellow to it and create those dots, and it'll look pretty much the same as it does here. I took my red and my burnt umber and I went around each of the petals at the very tips with a very more pigment on my brush to create those dark tips of the petals. I think it really adds a spark of color and a little bit more dimension. And for the rest of the painting, to finish it up, I'm just going to add more darks to the center and some veins on the leaves and anywhere I think it needs just a little bit more of a detail with a kind of a dry brush with a lot of pigment on it. A little bit more of that gray, Payne's gray, purpley gray, and I'm adding some lines under the stamens to show that the sun is coming from the top left corner and shining down on the plant and casting a shadow right under those stamens. And I want to just thank you for taking my class, and if you really enjoyed it, please subscribe and hit that little bell so that you can be notified when I upload more videos. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.